Hello, welcome to this video. I'm Parmdeep Videsha and I'm doing a video for helping people find high yielding properties. So I've got some notes here, I'm just going to go through them very quickly, hopefully give you some good tips. First thing I would say before you go looking for high yielding properties is to understand the difference between net yield and gross yield. I know it sounds really obvious, but a lot of people confuse the two because net is after your bills, utilities, council tax, all the rest of it have come out, management costs. Now, if you're buying a property that's high yielding on a gross level, gross high yielding, so a gross yield is just taking the rental income, annual rental income, and dividing it into the value of the property. So if you use that, then what you might find is you've got a high yield there, but once you take out your costs, the yield might not be quite as good as you thought. So especially where you're managing properties yourself, take into account that time and energy effort, because that is a real cost. It's just not coming out of your pocket. So second, think about risks. For example, if you're going and giving a company a 5-year let, say they're doing asylum seekers or ex-offenders, you can get quite high yields on those. They might have a deal where they would take care of management and that sort of thing, even maintenance often is included, but they will then take away fair wear and tear. Well, what's fair wear and tear in that situation is going to differ. Definition of that is going to differ between you and them. They might not necessarily pay for repairs that you would want paid for. So be very clear on how that contract is set up, talk to people who've done that sort of deal before, understand what you're getting into. Don't be put off by flipping properties. We flipped 5 different properties last year that we could have kept, but the yields wouldn't have been that great. You might argue that, well, if you keep them long enough, they will kind of turn into a good investment. Well, that's not really how we work. We want to have a good investment from day one. So if you're in London, say if you're down south somewhere, that actually works in your advantage, because if you can find a property that's worth flipping, you could make 1, 2, 3 years worth of income in one hit. That would mean you don't need to go finding any high yielding properties straight away, because you've got a nice store of capital there you can then do other things with, or even just live off for a while. There aren't as many high yielding properties on the market as there used to be, because interest rates are low and people are searching for them, so you have to think a bit outside the box. So one example is look for properties that you can split into smaller units. Now, one tip I'd give here is go on YouTube and search Japanese micro apartments. And the Japanese, because of especially in Tokyo, because of the very limited space, they've been very creative in making very, very, very small spaces feel much larger than they actually are, in terms of clever windows, positioning, lighting, storing sort of the way that you might store things, for example, under the floor, so you can lift up something and there's storage there. You might have beds that you can go up against the wall, and when they go up, a desk opens up underneath, and when you put them back down again, the desk disappears. So very, very clever techniques available, furniture and layout techniques are available now, where you can make those kinds of units. So you might find that in London, I think in terms of the regulations on sizes, they're not necessarily fixed by law. You can actually go quite small and still have a legally rentable property. So I think that's something that is worth following, because in that case, being very clever with design is going to be very important, and not everybody's going to be very good at that. So that might give you a competitive advantage in that market, in that space. The other option is you could look out for properties where you can split off the bits you don't want. So for example, a mixed-use property might have a commercial element downstairs. You could split the commercial element into 2, get them rented out. That will then be sold off as a high yielding, as a reasonable yield commercial investment. That then brings down the total purchase price for the upstairs. Perhaps that's 2 flats or offices. You can convert that into, say, 4 flats for micro or studio apartments. That then brings up your return. Sorry, we are in a letting agency. We are going to get calls, so sorry about that. But yeah, so I forgot to mention actually, we're in our letting agency, Tranquility Homes in Leicester, and in a second I'll talk a bit about that. So look for properties where you can split off, because that way then it brings down your total purchase price for the upstairs part, which is all you wanted to keep. So that's a very, very good strategy. And if none of that works, you can go and look at other locations. So I'm in Leicester, and a typical family let here near where we're based, you could probably get 6 or 7% yield just buying a house and renting it to a typical a family. So if you were to be more intensive with some of the strategies I'm talking about, it's not unreasonable to expect 9, 10, 11% yields, gross yields. So if you are going to do that, be sure you work with a competent manager, because that's where things can fall apart. Now, people who work with us, they know we've got an infrastructure here. We manage about 120 properties. We should be managing about 170 by the end of this year. This is 2018. So we've got an infrastructure there, we've got staff, we've got software and all the rest of it that makes it all work. Now, you need someone like that on the ground who's reputable and trustworthy, because if you don't have that, you're going to find you're going to get dragged into the property and managing it all and everything, and then it kind of defeats the purpose. So underneath this video, hopefully this video has given you some good tips, and underneath you'll find a link to register for a visit to come and see us in Leicester. And if you're interested and want to see how we do things, have a look at the kind of properties that we're involved with, deals we've done, developments we've worked on, and just meet me and the team and ask us questions, then you're welcome to come along, and hopefully I'll see you there.